in. Aries Rose here, and today I'm doing my very first live on YouTube. So, welcome. If you are here, leave a 1 in the chat. If you're an Aries Crew member, leave a hashtag Aries Crew in the chat. Today, we're going to talk about the latest Halle Berry movie, Never Let Go. Let me know in the comments if you had a chance to see it. So I want to talk a little bit about who's in the movie, what the movie's about, what I liked about the movie, what I didn't care for so much in the movie, and then we're just going to kind of go through the different scenes that really stood out to me. So this is a warning. Once we get to that part, there will be spoiler alerts in there. So if you don't want to see that, don't watch this live yet. Watch it after you watch the movie. So if you're not familiar, the movie is Never Let Go. It's the latest one starring Halle Berry, Anthony B. Jenkins. We also have William Catlett in there and Percy Daggs the fourth. And it's directed by Alexandre Aja. And the movie is about a family that has been haunted by an evil spirit for years. Their safety and their surroundings come into question when one of the children questions if the evil is real. So kind of vague, doesn't really go too much into what it's about, but just enough that it got my attention, and the trailers most definitely got my attention. I want to start with the things that I really liked about this movie. So I liked the premise. It was kind of came off as scary. I wasn't sure if it was psychological or if there was something that was actually happening. And I think throughout the movie, they did a really good job of walking that line where you weren't 100% sure if it was actually happening or if this was just in her head. And because that's all the kids had heard since they were growing up, they were starting to believe it, or it was adjusting their reality and they were going to see things based on that. And I can say throughout the whole movie, even up until the end, I wasn't even 100% sure if it was real or not. So, in that sense, I thought they did a great job. I thought the acting by the two boys that played her sons in the movie were some of the strongest acting performances. I think they did great. They came off as believable brothers, and the way they acted, I could see that happening if that scenario was something they were actually living in. I could see that being very believable. I thought Halle Berry actually did a really good job. She came off as a loving mom in some parts, and in other parts, it came off a little bit questionable about what she was doing or why she was making her kids go through certain things. And there were times when I wasn't sure if she was maybe having some kind of a break from reality and she was trying to cope with things she had done in another life, because she does allude in different parts of the movie to she had spent time in the outside world and she had different experiences there, and coming back to that home seemed to be a safe place for her, but then it kind of started to go bad there, and it looks like things that she had did in that life that weren't so good came back and followed her there. And if you are here in the chat, leave a 1 if you can hear me, and leave a hashtag Aries Crew if you are a part of the Aries Crew. Thank you for being here. Hope you're having a good Saturday. And another part of the movie that I thought that they did a really good job with was the scenery. The cinematography was fantastic. That cabin, the whole woods area, you did a good job of feeling like you were isolated. You were just kind of, that was the last part of the world. So I thought they did a really good job of playing that up, kind of like Knock at the Cabin, where it seemed like that was the last place on earth. They did a good job of playing that up. Like, is there anything beyond this? Is this what everything looks like outside of this area? So kudos to them for that. Some parts of the movie that I did not care for so much was you never really did get a resolution on if it was real or not, if there was truly an evil there, or if it was just all in her mind. And I would have liked to see that. I think it would have made the movie more interesting if it did kind of come to some conclusion that the audience could draw from. It just kind of left it hanging out there where you pick what you think was going on in there. And that's good or bad, but for me, I wanted more of a definitive understanding of that. But I would definitely go and watch a sequel to this movie, because the way it ended, it seemed like there's going to be a little bit more, or if they did a prequel to find out what was even going on to begin with, that would be really good. I think that would help make the movie even more interesting than the way they left it. Another thing I didn't care for so much was the way Halle Berry tended to interact with her kids. It kind of sometimes came off cold, and it didn't give a whole lot of understanding of why the kids were there, how she even came to have kids, and then why it was just the three of them left there, like what happened that made the world end, that she believed that this evil caused everybody to go away and it was just them left. Like, how is it just the three of you out of the whole world that's left, and you guys were the only ones able to escape the evil? That was kind of odd, and kind of the way she made them live was a little bit odd because they were scavengers. They just had to live off the area they were in. Whatever food was available, whatever things were available, that's what they lived off of. There was one scene when Anthony B. Johnson just ate a frog right there, found one and just ate it. No cooking it up, no nothing. So that was interesting because you're just kind of trying to understand, why are they living this way? And now this is on to some spoiler parts. We're going to talk about scenes in the movie that really stood out to me. So in the first part of the movie, when it starts off, you see Halle Berry at this home. It's a pretty nice sized home out in the middle of the woods. And then you see what appears to be some kind of ghost zombie that looks like it's a man who I believe is her father. And he obviously is no longer with us. And then you kind of see him there while she's sitting on the stairs, and he's on the other side of the stairs, and then he's just gone, which is kind of how you know it's maybe not real. They don't stay, but they have to tie themselves to this rope that's still connected to the house. And the belief is, as long as they are connected to the house, they are protected from the evil, and the rope allows them to go outside of the home. So they wear that every time they go out. They tie it around them. And after that scene, it starts off with the mom and her two sons going out in the morning. They're walking through the woods trying to find different things to eat and store up. And the younger brother starts to see something, and he was going towards it. He sees something in the woods, and he was going towards it, and the older brother kind of stops him and is like, "Don't take your rope off. You know you're not supposed to do that. The evil's gonna get you." And he ends up stopping his brother from taking off his rope. And then as they're kind of walking away from this area he was going to go into, he hears his older brother say, "Mama likes me more," or "loves me more," one of the two. And the younger brother gets upset and steps on his brother's rope, which he ends up falling out of, and ultimately he ends up breaking his leg because he starts to roll down a little hill, and he doesn't have his rope on anymore. And the mom hears them screaming, and Halle Berry comes running over to save them. And then she sees an evil version of her mom after she gets her boys, and she's hugging them and she's holding them tight, and she wraps the rope around them, and she sees that evil zombie like version of her mom that has a split tongue like a snake, and it's just kind of around her with its tongue out, looking like it's just breathing, walking around her. It was kind of strange. It didn't really do anything, and she just kind of held her eyes closed. And the boy said, "Do you see it, Mama? What do you see?" And she said, "It looks like my mama." So to her, the evil comes in different forms. And so at some point, she saw it as her dad in the beginning of the movie, and now at this point, she's seeing it as her mom. And then it goes on to, after that experience, the younger brother, whose name is Nolan in the movie, asks the older brother, whose name is Sammy, "Did you notice anything different after the rope was off?" Because for their whole life, their mom was telling them that if you take the rope off, the evil's going to get you. It's a bad thing. And it actually happened to them that time. And he wanted to know, did you experience something different? Did you see something different when you let it go? And the brother didn't really have anything that he noticed or that was different, but he believes his mom. He trusts his mom. He believes what she says, so he doesn't really feel a need to question what she's telling him. And that kind of makes sense for being the older child. You you had more years of hearing that same information, so you're less likely to question it because you trust your parent and you believe they wouldn't lie to you. But the younger brother, you can start to tell, is kind of questioning, like, I don't know, there's got to be something more to this. And I think he was probably one of the most interesting characters because you watched his growth more than any other one in there. And then at some point, Halle Berry in the evening is out on her porch and she has, which may be an actual evil or just may be a hallucination of the boy's father, who's played by William Catlett. And he comes and asks her if he can see the kids. And she's not having that, obviously. She's not going to bring the kids out or try and introduce that. But you can tell that he's probably not real. It's got to be a ghost in the way that he just kind of shows up there. You don't really see him walking up. It doesn't seem like he's coming from somewhere and then made his way here. He just kind of appears and he turns, and you could see he has a gunshot wound in his back. So you can tell he was dead because it's a pretty big hole in his back. And it appears that it may have been done by Halle Berry's character, who's either Mama in the movie or June, is what I believe the name was that he called her. And he walks up to the house, to the steps, and says, you know, I got so close, talking about so close to getting in. And he's talking about when he does get in, he's going to make her hurt her children. And that's what her fear is. She does not want to invite or have that evil in her because she does not want to hurt her children. And then it kind of goes to, as the movie progresses, they're running out of food options. There's not a lot of things to eat there. Apparently, the animals haven't come back that they would normally end up eating, and it hasn't been a really good year for crops growing, so they're just kind of running out of food. Whatever they had left, they're kind of running out of, and so it gets to the point where they're eating tree bark. And she's cut it up and cooked it up, and they're eating that, and she put sap on it, and the younger brother just kind of looks like he's just crunching it. I feel for all of them, thinking this has got to be terrible for your teeth, but you know, he's just trying to go along with what's happening right there. And the older brother, Sammy, says to his younger brother, Nolan, it's better with sap. And Nolan says, yeah, that will make it taste less like a tree. Like, I can only imagine that it didn't help with the flavor. I don't even know how they could quite swallow that down. But that's kind of at the point where they were. They were getting to where there weren't a whole lot of food options, but they have to eat something. They have to put something in their system to kind of sustain because they're the only ones taking care of themselves out there. And Nolan, you kind of realize, who's the younger brother, has a sleepwalking issue. At some point, he is caught sleepwalking into his mom's room, and she realizes that he's still asleep and puts him back in the bed. And she says, oh, you took your bell off. And she ties the bell around his ankles so you know you can hear him when he starts to move around. And he does this, and at some point, he ends up outside at night. And he doesn't realize he's sleepwalking until he hears the bell, and then he realizes he's asleep. He looks up, he doesn't have the rope around him, and he's outside of the house. His mom ends up hearing the bell and comes out and saves him and brings him back into the house so the evil does not have a chance to get him. And then mom has a talk with her sons, Sammy and Nolan, at the table saying, you know, hey, none of the animals have come back. We've had some hard months out here where we haven't been getting any crops and the things that we normally have been eating on. Their supply that they had jarred and saved up is starting to run low. They've been eating on that. And she says they have no choice but to eat Coda, which is the family dog. And Nolan, the younger brother, is particularly close to this animal and is just not feeling that option, not happy about it, doesn't want to do that. And that's kind of understandable. And the dog is the only one that does not have to be tied to the house. The dog can roam around as far as it wants in the woods, no problem. It can be away from the house and doesn't seem to be affected or could potentially be affected by the evil. The younger brother, kind of, that's one of the things that also makes him wonder, like, well, why can the dog do that and we can't do that? But he does have a close bond with this dog because outside of his mom and his brother, that's the only other living thing they have around them, and the dog does protect them, provide some level of protection for them. And he's like, we can leave. We don't have to stay here. Nolan's telling his mom, we don't have to stay here. We can leave. We can go around. There's got to be something more. We can try to find something. And she just, for whatever reason, wants them to believe that there is nothing else left. Like, this is it. It's just us in this house. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing else we can do but that. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, if you do this to the dog, what happens after that? As long as you guys are still alive, you're still going to have the same issue of needing to eat. You need to have that. And if you take that now, what are you going to do in the future? So it was kind of one of those where you were thinking this must be getting towards the end of whatever this is that she has going on with them, because there just weren't a whole lot of options on how they were going to be able to sustain themselves with food, which you need to live, to at least continue living the way they are, to take care of themselves. So the younger brother Nolan takes the dog and he goes, and mom just takes the dog from him, takes him out to what's like a shed greenhouse area, seemingly with the intent to delete the dog. And she takes this dog into the little shed and she points the equipment that she's going to use to delete the dog at the dog. But, she kind of has a hesitation moment where she just doesn't do it outright. You can kind of tell she was wrestling with, should I do this? Should I not do this? And in that moment, Nolan comes out, the younger brother, and he cuts the rope and he locks his mom in this greenhouse area, and she is just banging on the door for her life. She is like, why did you do that? Let me out of here. And he is not unlocking that door. He's like, you need to see that it's okay. It's not real. And she is just saying, I did not tell you everything. She said, I brought the evil here, and if it gets into her, it's going to make her delete her children, which is what William Catlett, who's the father of the kids, that maybe hallucination, maybe personification of evil, told her he was going to do if he got in. And then she sees her mom, the same vision that she saw when the kids were outside without their rope, and she got the rope around them in just enough time, and then that vision appears, and again with the forked tongue, kind of with that snake-like appearance, saying, that she was a bad girl and that she had poisoned her soup. So it appears that June, the Halle Berry character, had deleted her parents, and that was how she had deleted her mom, by poisoning her food. And she's saying, I'm not going to let Halle Berry's character saying, I'm not going to let you get into me, and she slits her throat. And at that point, she just lays on the ground, and that's when the older son, Sammy, sees that, and he's just crying. He is beside himself. He loves his mom. He didn't want anything to happen to his mom, and he is just so sad. He goes and lays next to her, and he's crying. And it was the sad part of the movie, because ultimately these are little boys. They aren't adults, and they aren't teens yet. So they were going to be alone without an adult to take care of them. And their life was already tough. But without an adult, it was about to get tougher, because there were things they didn't know, because they had never been outside of that home or outside of those woods. So they were truly, truly on their own. So my heart broke for him in that moment. And the younger brother then kind of realizes what he did. He kind of snaps out of whatever moment he was having. And you can see he's really sad about it. I don't think that was ever his intent. I don't think he really believed anything was happening or that it would go as far as it did, but unfortunately it did, because his mom really believed that. And then now they're just kind of living on their own, grappling with the fact their mom is not there anymore, and a random stranger just shows up. And you can't tell if this person is real or if it's all a hallucination and he's not real, just the evil coming in a different form to try to trick the boys. But finds Nolan, who's coming back from going out to go and hunt and try to find some food for him and his brother. And the guy's telling him, hey, you guys are all the way out here by yourself. And, Nolan's like, what are you doing out here? He's saying he's looking for food. He's telling him, oh, I have some food in my car. You need to come back here. And older brother Sammy comes out and is like, no, we're not having that. We're not going with you. We don't know who you are. And he deletes the man because he is believing what his mom has told him, that this place is surrounded by evil, so nothing that's here, anything you see that isn't them is not good. And Nolan is like, why did you do that? He said he could help us. He said he had food. Like, you did not need to do that. And I just believe that the brother was very just indoctrinated with what the mom believed and thought he was doing the right thing and protecting them. And Nolan ends up going out to find the guy because the guy wasn't fully deleted in that moment, but he had hurt him to a point that it was going to happen. And he follows the trail of blood and finds the guy. And the guy is, on his last legs, and he takes his backpack. And in his backpack, there's some food, and he brings that food back to the home, and they eat that. And it's like real food that they haven't had in a long time. It's canned food. So he's trying to figure out how to open it. And he figures out how to open it up because they hadn't seen that before. And they were able to eat and eat a pretty decent meal. And he shared some with his brother. He's like, try this. This food will make you feel better. You're going to feel better after you eat this. And then kind of goes to the evening, and the stranger that they had saw earlier in the day that was offering Nolan food before the older brother had deleted him said that he had a daughter that was with him. And this daughter then appears that night and says, hey, I'm looking for my dad. Have you seen my dad? He said he was going to come back to the car and he never came back. And Sammy, the older brother, says, I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't know. I didn't mean it. And she just kind of starts crying and takes off running, and Sammy follows her, and he doesn't have the rope on. So he's going out there without any protection. Mom isn't there anymore. And at this time, his younger brother, Nolan, is asleep, doesn't know what's happening. And then the young girl ends up stopping and starts contorting the body and turns into the evil. And then the evil ends up infecting Sammy, unfortunately. And after he gets bitten by this young girl. And then Nolan is trying to find his brother. He's calling for him. And he comes out and he ties the rope onto himself, just in case some different things have been happening here. And he ties the rope on himself, leaves the house looking for his older brother, Sammy. And when he finds him, Sammy ends up cutting Nolan's rope. And Nolan then runs back to the house. Because at this point, he's believing something is going on. And then Sammy ends up coming back into the house. Now, how Sammy was able to get into the house, I am not clear on, because that house was supposed to be protected from the evil. So how he got in, I don't understand. Again, another part of the movie that you kind of just roll with, but not fully understand why him. Not sure if it's because he was born there or what made it different for him versus the other visions that Halle Berry was seeing. But Sammy ends up setting the house on fire, trying to delete his brother. And fortunately, his brother is able to make it through that, but then he ends up seeing a vision of his mom while he's trying to get out of the house. And ultimately, he ends up grabbing on to this vision of his mom and then falling into like this box that she had the kids go into, and she would make them sit in this box, and they were supposed to completely lose themselves and then find their way back with love and how they were going to get reattached to the house, and this was supposed to help make the house understand why it should protect them and show appreciation to the house. Well, he takes her in there, that cellar door closes, that kind of box door closes, and he's just holding on to her, and she is just moving around and doing all this twisting and turning, and then kind of turns into a snake like type of a thing, and then just ultimately ends up puffing out into, just bursting into dust. So I kind of translated that as the evil dispersing, maybe. Not sure what that was meant to say, or if it was a way to kind of say it was breaking free from that. And ultimately, the fact that Nolan was in that kind of box cellar thing saved him from being deleted when the house around him was completely burned down, and the older brother was on the outside, so he wasn't in danger of being burned down with the house. But he had a Polaroid camera that his mom had gave them after she had showed them a couple pictures she took from her life on the outside, as she calls it, her life on the outside. And she said, "There's one more picture left in here that you can take." And she showed them how to use it and said that there's the perfect time you'll know when to use it. And he takes a picture of himself with his back to the house that's burning down. And when you see the Polaroid picture, once it's developed, you see that there's like a snake-like hand that's on his shoulder. So it kind of symbolizes that there was something there. And that's what kind of made me think it was real, but it may not have been. You don't really come to that conclusion, but the boys end up getting saved, and helicopter comes in and gets them out. They're airlifted up. Mind you, this is the first time they've seen people outside of their mom and each other, because they didn't know that anything else existed outside of that. And once they are airlifted up in this helicopter, you see that there's a whole world, a whole city outside of where they live. So she had them believing that nothing else existed when in fact something else does exist, and a whole bunch of other people do exist. I mean, food, a whole different way of life than the way they were living is happening outside of that home. And she had really gotten to their minds that they would not have gone beyond that home. I believe if that house was not burned down where they didn't have a place to stay, they probably would have just ended up staying there their whole lives if it just was able to continue that way. And in the helicopter, the older brother says the same comment that the younger brother heard earlier in the movie that made him step on his rope, that ultimately made him end up breaking his leg from rolling down a hill, is that Mama loves me more or Mama likes me more. One of the two. And that kind of makes you think, is the evil gone or did he take it with him? Like, where did this start? Because Halle Berry was going to say a little bit more, but she didn't finish when she said, "I brought the evil here." So you're kind of left with trying to figure out if you think it was real. Did she pass it on? How is this spreading? What's going on here? Is it now outside of that woods? Was she there to protect the world, or was she trying to protect them from the world? So many questions. But ultimately, I want to know what you think. If you saw the movie Never Let Go, let me know your thoughts, if you thought it was real or hallucination. What scenes or characters really stood out to you in a good or bad way? I want to hear all of that. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you have not already done so. It's free to be a part of the Aries crew. We upload shorts, videos. I'm going to be going live more. Going to do another live talking about Beetlejuice later on today. So make sure you stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later.